2022 was a big year for gaming. Not only did we get games like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok, which both got unanimous praise, but Sonic fans finally got a modern game that they could call decent. Despite all these exciting games, my most anticipated game for that year was Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. After Pokémon Legends Arceus came out, I was really excited to hear about Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, as Pokémon Legends Arceus had become my favorite game of all time. So imagine my disappointment when the game came out and the whole Pokémon community started sharing videos where the game looked like this. Anyways, now that I've had some time to look back on the games, I wanted to make a full review on them. So yeah, that's what this video is. Before I start, I'd like to state that I will only be looking at the base games of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, and anything that was added in the DLCs will be ignored for the sake of this video. From the intro of this video, it might sound like I hate these games. However, I don't. I just have very mixed feelings about them. The reason why is because the actual gameplay part of the game is very enjoyable and fun, but the problem comes with the many glitches and constant frame drops. For reference, I originally played Pokémon Violet about a month or two after it came out. This means that the performance of the game was roughly the same as it was on release. Whilst glitches and lag didn't affect my game for the first 5 hours, they eventually became what I had expected to see when I played the game. The reason why is because Pokémon Scarlet and Violet have a memory leak issue. Basically, in simple terms, this means the more you play the game, the more you will experience issues like frame drops. When I started experiencing frame drops, it annoyed me as it interrupted the flow of the game. Whilst I didn't experience many glitches, the ones that I did were very annoying. Sometimes I would jump with Miraidon, and when I hit the ground I would be stuck in the jumping animation, or sometimes my character would be missing textures and would look like a genuine freak of nature. Honestly, I'm just happy I didn't experience some of the glitches that I saw online. I remember being both amused and a little disappointed by the videos of people absolutely breaking the game apart. Just like most Pokémon games, Scarlet and Violet's core gameplay revolves around the player exploring different areas so they can catch new Pokémon and fight gym leaders until they get 8 gym badges. Once they've gotten 8 gym badges, they can fight the Elite Four and Champion. Amongst these gym leaders, there are also Titan Pokémon and Team Star bases. The Titan Pokémon act as super beefed up versions of normal Pokémon, almost like a boss fight. They may remind you of the Totem Pokémon from Sun and Moon and the Ultra games. The Team Star bases act as the evil team part of the story, but as for gameplay, they require the player to fight a certain number of Pokémon using auto battle before they can fight the boss of the base. Also, that's another thing, there's auto battle in these games. With the many different things to do in these games, Scarlet and Violet avoids using a linear structure and instead opts for a more non-linear and open world-like structure. Unlike Pokémon Legends Arceus, each open area is connected to each other, except for Area 0, which is in the center of the map being guarded off by the player needing the climb ability to get there and a loading zone. Battles are now improved with the new terrestrialization ability, which many competitive Pokémon players have praised for being useful but not overpowered like some other abilities from other games. Catching Pokémon has gone back to the older system. I prefer the Pokémon Legends Arceus system. However, they kept backstrikes from that game, which is a nice improvement to the old system. As for other gameplay improvements, there is now an auto heal option. You also have a ride Pokemon from the very start of the game because of the open world. Notably, a lot of Pokemon have had their models updated to show details such as fur and scales. There is now a new co-op multiplayer function that makes catching Pokemon with friends very fun. As for cosmetics, you must use a select few uniforms whilst playing. However, there are many options for hat, hair, shoes, and other small cosmetic changes. You can also customize your player card and profile pic. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. They removed the shiny sound effect and sparkles. I'll never forgive Game Freak for doing this. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet has one of the best stories in the entire series, on par with the stories of games like Pokémon Black and White 2 as well as Ultra Sun and Moon. The story has three main parts that come together to form one big story. This story follows you, the player, as well as your friends, Nimona, Arven, and Penny, who all attend a Pokémon school together. Nimona is your rival, who is also the champion of the region. She's an interesting character as she's trying to help the player get stronger so that she can finally have an actual challenge in a Pokémon battle. Penny is the shy kid, so we don't get to see too much of her throughout the story, but in the end it is revealed that she is the leader of Team Star. The reason why they were bullying everyone is because they were bullied in the past. This is actually a really cool part of the story, as we get to see the character progression of Team Star. They went from the kids who were bullied and then turned into the bullies themselves, and eventually realized that bullying isn't the solution to everything. Then we have Arven, who is the main friend for the Path of Legend story. In the story, Arven's Mabostiff has been injured by some strong Pokemon in Area 0. This part of the story is emotional, as you get to see Mabostiff become more and more weak and Arven become more and more desperate. In the end, Arven is luckily able to get Mabostiff moving again, with the help of the player fighting alongside Arven to get Herba Mystica. There's also the ending story of Scarlet and Violet, known as The Way Home, which is so good it almost makes up for the end of Sword and Shield. Basically, you and your friends go down to Area 0 with the help of your ride Pokemon. Down there you will find Paradox Pokemon, which are extinct versions of normal Pokemon if you're playing Scarlet, or futuristic Pokemon if you're playing Violet. Throughout your journey down Area 0, Arven keeps talking about the Professor, as Arven is the Professor's son. He says that he feels abandoned by his mum/dad, and that he doesn't like how his only parent doesn't pay much attention to him. However, once you get down there, you find out that Sada/Toro is dead, and that you've been talking to a robot the entire time. It turns out the original professor was so obsessed with Paradox Pokemon to the point where he risked his life to save your ride Pokemon from another Miraidon/Koraidon that was attacking it. The AI professor wants you to destroy the time machine that is bringing Paradox Pokemon into Area 0, but he warns you that he will attack the player as he was programmed to do so by the professor if the time machine was touched. The player then defeats Sada/Toro and turns off the time machine, ending the story. It's just good, just like every Pokemon game. I don't know what else you want me to say, so moving on. I talked about this a little bit in the gameplay chapter, but I wanted to go more in depth as it is a big part of any open world game. Aside from glitches and frame drops, this is probably the worst part about Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. You see, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet's open world design is handled weirdly. Games like Zelda Breath of the Wild and Elden Ring show us that there are two main ways to make an open world. Breath of the Wild handles its open world by putting a dot on the map and telling the player to go there. Most of the time this is a bad way to handle an open world, but Breath of the Wild's world is designed in such a way that you will get distracted. Link starts out very weak, which encourages the player to find resources and power-ups. This makes it so that the player will always know where to go but will be tricked into exploring different areas. Elden Ring takes a different approach and never puts a marker on the map. This way of open world game design makes it so that the player is guided by their own curiosity. Pokémon Scarlet and Violet is weird because it uses Breath of the Wild's version of an open world game, but implements it poorly. Here, instead of the player being guided by the idea that they will get stronger if they explore, they are instead guided by the Pokémon they want to catch. But what if the player doesn't want to catch any Pokémon? If this happens, the game goes from an open world game made for exploration to a linear game where there are long stretches between each main objective. The Pokémon make this world even more annoying, because if you don't want to catch them, they become an obstacle. Imagine you're about to enter a dungeon in any Zelda game and you're running there, excited to see what's inside, but you're interrupted by... So annoying too, because Game Freak had the mechanic of throwing a Pokeball to a Pokemon to start a battle, but they decided to keep it so that you could start a battle by just touching the Pokemon. They made a whole game with that mechanic and it worked so well, so why did they change it? In conclusion, Pokémon Scarlet and Violet are amazing games that are flawed by their glitches. I really like the direction of these new Pokémon games, so much so that Pokémon Legends Arceus and Pokémon Violet are the only games where I have completed the Pokédex. Despite the glitches of Scarlet and Violet, I am really excited to see what Game Freak does with Pokémon Legends ZA, and I'm hopeful that it will be a great game.